Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and gather round, for tonight you're in for something truly extraordinary. Watch closely now, because what I'm about to tell you is no ordinary trick. Hidden in the folds of history is a word that has crossed centuries, healed the sick and warded off danger. A word that with just a whisper once held the power to change fate. As you can hear, there is nothing up my sleeve, no trapdoor beneath my feet, and no hidden strings. This is pure, unadulterated magic, the kind that has lived in our imaginations for millennia, the kind that even though we know better, still makes us lean in a little closer, hoping for something impossible. Now prepare yourselves, because I will manifest a word of great power, a word you've all heard before as it makes its grand entrance. I give you Abracadabra. Welcome to Podcast Folklore, where we dig through the stories, legends and forgotten tales that have quietly shaped our world. I'm your host Chris, and today we're unravelling the curious journey of one word that has enchanted the minds for thousands of years: Abracadabra. It is a word we've all heard, often accompanied by a flourish of hand and a twinkle in the eye. But it wasn't always just for pulling rabbits out of hats or turning silk scarves into doves. No, this little word has a history, and one that might surprise you. So, let's start, as most good stories do, in the distant past. Words have always created a special kind of power. In some cultures, words were believed to create and destroy, to heal and to harm. And perhaps no word has wielded that mysterious power quite like Abracadabra. Our story here begins in the 2nd century CE, with a man named Psammonichus. Now, Psammonichus wasn't just any physician. He was a scholar, a man steeped in knowledge of ancient wisdom and mystical arts. He firmly believed that some afflictions needed more than just herbs and potions. They required the magic of language itself. So now imagine you're a patient, and you're suffering from a fever that refuses to break, and you're desperate for relief. Psammonichus hands you an amulet with Abracadabra carefully inscribed, but not in a way you expect it. The words appear in a shape of overlapping triangles, starting with Abracadabra at the top and dropping one letter with each line until there's only a solitary A remaining at the bottom point. It is an elegant piece, yet there is something mesmerising, almost ritualistic about its form. This wasn't just an amulet. Psammonichus' method was an incantation of sorts, a visual representation of the fever slowly dwindling, letter by letter, until it vanished entirely. The patient, clutching this triangular charm, could watch the letters disappear as they hoped the illness would do the same. It was like watching the fever burn itself out, line by line, until nothing remained. In those ancient days, when medicine was limited and illness was often a life or death matter, hope was a powerful force. For Psammonichus' patients, these charms could have been more than a symbol. It was a lifeline, a whisper of a cure in a world where sickness often struck without warning and remedies were scarce. But why Abracadabra? Why did Psammonichus choose this particular word to carry such a potent weight? The truth is, even Psammonichus might not even know the full origins of the word he wielded. The word's roots, you see, are hazily shadowed by the sands of time and hinted at in various languages and traditions, but never fully revealed. The most popular theory brings us to Aramaic, an ancient language rich with sacred meanings. The phrase Abracadabra translates to "I create as I speak," as a bold declaration that resonates with the very essence of magic, the power that brings forth change simply through the act of speaking. Think about that for a moment. If words could really alter reality, then what might be possible? In a time when belief was intertwined with survival, a phrase like "I create as I speak" might have felt like a promise, as if a single utterance could reforge the world. But there is another possibility, one that pulls us into the mystical realms of Gnosticism. Gnostic mystics were often active in the early centuries, and they believed that knowledge itself was a kind of salvation. To them, words held divine power, and the names, true names, were the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. One of the most intriguing figures in Gnostic mythology was Abraxas, a deity associated with the balance of good and evil, life and death. For the Gnostics, invoking a name like Abraxas wasn't a mere ritual, it was a way to draw upon the cosmic forces. Perhaps Abracadabra was inspired by ancient gods' names, a word meant to invoke cosmic power, or whispered connections to the mysteries of life and death. And yet, there is another theory, one that suggests Abracadabra could be tied to Hebrew or even Greek roots. Some scholars propose that it may have come from Hebrew words for Father, Son and Spirit, a trinity of sorts, invoking the cycle of life. Or perhaps it was Greek, derived from Abraxas, where the letters symbolise the 7 classical planets. Nobody truly knows which theory, if any, is correct. But maybe that's part of the magic. Because even if the exact origin remains a mystery, Abracadabra carried a weight across cultures and languages, echoing through the history as both a shield and a spell. So as you can see, Abracadabra wasn't just a random selection of syllables, it was something woven with meaning and ancient wonder. By the time of Simonicus, the word was already well travelled, carrying fragments of forgotten beliefs and whispered promises. And in his hands it became a bridge between science and mysticism, a tool that allowed people to face the unknown with a little more courage. In a way, Simonicus' amulet was more than just an artefact. It was a symbol of how humans have always sought ways to master the mysteries of life. How, even in the face of death and disease, we've always reached for something beyond the ordinary. And maybe, just maybe, that's what's kept Abracadabra alive, even when the magic around us seems to have faded. So whether it's Aramaic, Gnostic, Hebrew, or something entirely different, Abracadabra endures because it has captured something universal, the human hope that words have power to protect, to heal, and perhaps, in some mysterious way, change the world. So while we're on the subject of ancient magic, let's take a slight detour. Let's go way back to one of the earliest recorded magic acts in history, long before stage magicians in top hats and velvet gloves. We're heading to ancient Egypt, to the sprawling court of Pharaoh Khufu, the same ruler who commissioned the Great Pyramids of Giza, one of the most enduring symbols of human ingenuity and mystery. Now Khufu was not only a powerful ruler, but he was a curious one. He was fascinated by the secrets of the world. So when he heard about the magician named Didi, who could perform feats of wonder, he summoned him to his court, eager to see this alleged miracles with his own eyes. Didi, of course, was no stranger to royal ordinances. He knew the art of captivating a crowd, and he wasn't about to disappoint the pharaoh. Picture it. The grand hall filled with nobility, officials and courtiers, all watching as Didi steps forward and bringing with him a goose. An odd choice for a magic trick perhaps, but this wasn't any ordinary performance. Without a word, Didi reached out, grasped the goose and swiftly decapitated it. Gasps likely rippled through the halls as the lifeless bird slumped in Didi's hands. Even Khufu, who's used to witnessing the powerful riches of Egyptian priests, might have been taken aback. But Didi was far from finished. With a calm confidence, he lifted the bird's head and placed it back on its body, and with a murmur of words long since lost to time, the impossible happened. The goose's eyes opened, its wings fluttered, and to everyone's astonishment, it came back to life, perfectly restored. Move over, soaring lady in a half trick. Didi just put a decapitated goose back together. This was more than a mere parlour trick. In that era, a feat like this wasn't just impressive, it bordered on the divine. The ancient Egyptians were deeply spiritual people, and the idea of reviving life was powerful, almost sacred. Didi's magic seemed to brush up against the realms of the gods, stirring up wonder and even a hint of fear in the audience. But if that wasn't enough, Didi wasn't content to stop with just one animal. Reports from the time say that he repeated the act with a duck and even an ox, each time severing the head and with the same mysterious incantation, restoring the creature to life. Pharaoh Khufu, awestruck, saw in Dede something more than an entertainer. He saw a potential key to immortality. You see, the Egyptians believed fervently in the afterlife, and achieving eternal life was their greatest aspiration. The pharaohs, in particular, invested enormous amounts of resources in the pursuit of life beyond death. Khufu himself ordered his Great Pyramid to be built as an eternal resting place and a monument to ensure his safe passage to the afterlife. And here was Dede, claiming that he had the power to define death itself, and at least reverse it temporarily. Legend has it that Khufu, almost breathless with excitement, asked Dede if his magic could be used to resurrect humans, perhaps even to extend life. But Dede, wise and perhaps cautious, gave a measured response. He explained that while he could perform wonders with animals, true human resurrection was a mystery reserved for the gods alone. Even for him, a mere mortal with knowledge of ancient secrets, some things remained beyond his reach. It is as if Dede knew where to draw the line, like he was merely borrowing from a greater power than himself. Perhaps that's what's made his act even more intriguing. Unlike modern magicians who insist upon all the illusions, Dede seemed to have believed he was accessing something real and something otherworldly. Dede's legend didn't end there though. His name would go down in history. He is mentioned in papyrus texts and even on inscriptions in tombs as a figure of both mystique and respect. To this day, Egyptologists debate the nature of his performances, wondering if there are elaborate tricks or if there was something about Egyptian beliefs, rituals, and perhaps even an early understanding of natural science that Dede understood and could use to his advantage. Dede's story reminds us that the line between magic and miracle, between belief and skepticism, has always been a fine one. In a world filled with gods and spirits, people like Dede didn't just perform, they invoked a sense of wonder that was deeply tied to the culture and the beliefs of their time. And so, while Abracadabra has its roots in healing and protective magic, it is impossible to separate the ancient wonder of words and symbols from the awe-inspiring acts of magicians like Dede. Both share a common thread, a desire to harness the mysteries of life, to see beyond the visible world, and perhaps, just for a moment, to change fate itself. Why do we keep certain words alive for centuries? Why do some stories linger, whispered across generations, refusing to fade even as time marches on? In the cases of Abracadabra, it is more than just a word. It is a reminder of our shared fascination with the idea that words hold power. It taps into something primal, something ancient, the belief that with the right word, the right sound, the right gesture, we might reshape reality itself. Perhaps no time illustrates this need more starkly than the years of the Black Plague. As the plague swept across Europe in the mid-1300s, claiming nearly a third of the population, people were desperate for any form of protection. The terror of the plague was unimaginable. Villages vanished overnight, entire families disappeared, and death itself seemed to be lurking around every corner. Medical knowledge was scarce, and what little medicine they had often failed against this relentless enemy. In their fear, people turned to whatever means to protect them they could find. Religious relics, protective symbols, and yes, the ancient words like Abracadabra. During these dark days, Abracadabra wasn't just a quaint incantation, it was a lifeline. Many people wore amulets described with the word, hoping it would act as a shield against the disease. They etched in their familiar triangular pattern, starting with Abracadabra written full at the top and dropping a letter each line until a final A remained. The triangle shape, shrinking line by line, mirrored by their hope that the disease would shrink and fade away as well. It was a kind of visual spell, a way of watching the plague itself diminish and disappear with each letter vanishing. For those who clung to these amulets, Abracadabra wasn't just a word, it was a small measure of control in a world that had spun into chaos. Imagine living in a time where illness was seen as a divine punishment or the wrath of a malevolent spirit. In such a world, a word like Abracadabra offered something desperately needed, a glimmer of hope, the feeling that with this one word they might have a fighting chance. While modern science might diminish abracadabra as nothing more than superstition, there is something deeply human in the act of belief. Sometimes hope alone is a powerful medicine. As the years wore on, the Black Plague subsided, but abracadabra remained. It was woven into folklore and whispered down through the generations. Its use as a charm, an incantation, and a symbol of protection continued. Even as science and medicine advanced, the stories about abracadabra continued to captivate imaginations, transforming it from a tool of survival into a piece of cultural magic that persisted throughout the centuries. The persistence of abracadabra across time speaks of the human desire to believe in something beyond ourselves. This is especially in times of crisis. The ancient meanings, "I create as I speak," or the evocation of a deity such as Abrax, might nearly be forgotten, but the idea remains. We want to believe that the words can hold sway over the forces that shape our lives. During the plague, abracadabra wasn't just a word, it was hope embodied. It was a spell against the darkness. And perhaps that's why abracadabra still lives on today. It has woven itself into the fabric of our cultures. It's whispered as a word of power by magicians, spelled out in children's books, and even appearing in casual speech whenever performing a magic trick of our own. What once served to protect us from a deadly plague is now a playful flourish, a word that bridges the mysticism and the mundane. So the next time you hear someone say abracadabra, remember the long line of people who believed in its power, those who clung to it during times of suffering and uncertainty. In those syllables lies a reminder that we are, in our own way, still connected to those who came before us. Ultimately, the stories we tell give life to the words we use. Because when we say abracadabra, we're not just repeating a word, we're invoking centuries of belief, fear and hope, and a touch of wonder as well. It is a reminder that no matter how advanced the world becomes, the human need for a little magic never truly fades. As the centuries turned, abracadabra transformed, moving from a talisman worn in times of sickness to a word of wonder spoken under stage lights. No longer just a whispered charm against illness, abracadabra took a new life as it slipped from the hands of healers and mystics to become a trusted tool of performers, magicians and storytellers. As time passed, the word began to lose its mystical weight, drifting from amulets and cures to something a bit more theatrical. By the 19th century, abracadabra found itself centre stage, literally. John Henry Anderson, a Scottish magician better known as the Great Wizard of the North, was among the first to make abracadabra part of his act. His shows were full of grand illusions, the kind that made you wonder, even just for a moment, if magic was real. And when he stood before his audience and uttered that famous word, he wasn't just pulling a rabbit out of a hat. He was calling on centuries of history, and this is whether the audience knew it or not. Anderson once joked, "No self-respecting magician leaves home without their abracadabra." I guess this was a nod to tradition, but perhaps maybe a cheeky wink to the audience. And so by then, abracadabra had evolved from the word of power to one of playful mystery, not used to heal, but to entertain. With this shift, abracadabra found a new stage, and that's quite literally. As magic shows rose in popularity in Europe in the 19th century, professional magicians and illusionists sought to create theatrical spectacles, these spectacles that would amaze and amuse their audiences. They drew upon the mystique of ancient charms, transforming the word into a kind of incantation that would signal something wondrous was about to happen. In the hands of magicians like Jan Eugene Robert Houdini, often called the father of modern magic, or as we know him, Harry Houdini, magic shows became a blend of science, sleight of hand and performance. Magicians would use abracadabra as a kind of magical flourish, a way to mark the moment before the big reveal. "Abracadabra!" they would shout, as if the word itself would conjure the trick into existence. It created a sense of anticipation, of suspended disbelief, encouraging the audience to lean just a little closer and wait to be dazzled. Imagine sitting in a crowded candlelit theatre. The room is buzzing with whispers of eager spectators. The magician stands before you, it's all mystery and poise, sleeves rolled up to show there is nothing hidden, there's no trickery here, or so it would seem. with the dramatic flourish and says "Abracadabra." Suddenly, the impossible happens right before your eyes. The rabbit appears from the hat, the woman vanishes in a puff of smoke, or the playing card you chose miraculously is revealed. For one moment, you're a believer. You're transported by the power of a word and the craft of illusion. In these shows, abracadabra became more than just a magic word. It was a bridge between the mystic past and the playful present. The word itself carried the sense of history, as if uttering it, the magician was invoking something timeless, a universal symbol of mystery and transformation. To the audience, it was part of the ritual, a clue that something magical was about to unfold. And for the magician, it became a very powerful tool, a way to cast a spell over the audience willing to suspend disbelief and let themselves be swept into the wonder of the moment. The transformation from a practical charm to a stage tool shows how adaptable and enduring abracadabra really is. It is no longer needed to protect people from sickness. Instead, it offered a kind of escape, a moment of delight that allowed audiences to feel that perhaps a little bit of real magic was still left in the world. Over time, abracadabra came to stand for all that is whimsical and mysterious in magic, a cue that invites us to embrace the impossible, if only for a few moments. Even now, the word abracadabra lives on as a playful nod to the universal need of magic. And this is whether it's the magician's stage, or in a child's game, or as a whispered phrase during a trick. The word reminds us of an age-old belief in the unseen and the possibility that words themselves could shape our world. So why does abracadabra still captivate us? Maybe it's because we all like to believe in a little magic now and then. Maybe it's because the word has survived for so many iterations, changing from a cure for fevers to a charm against plagues to the part of the modern stagecraft. It's a word that has been whispered in moments of desperation and shouted on stage and even written down in pages of history. Perhaps this is the real magic of abracadabra. No matter how much time has passed, it refuses to disappear. It endures, not because it once believed to hold power, because we still want to believe that words themselves can change the world. And that brings us to the heart of abracadabra's magic. It is not just the word, but it's the belief behind it. Over the centuries, the way we use abracadabra may have shifted, but the desires behind it remain the same. The hope that with just the right word, we might bend the forces of nature, change our fate, or at the very least, leave the audience in awe. So the next time you hear someone say abracadabra, whether this is at a child's birthday party, in an old book, or from a magician pulling off a trick, remember that this isn't just any word. It is a legacy of ancient beliefs, a whisper of ancient mysteries, and a reminder that sometimes, even in our modern world, we all want to believe in a little magic. And so thank you for joining me today on Podcast Folklore, where we've journeyed through history and myth and the stories that shaped our world. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the fascinating origins of abracadabra, and enjoy the curious tale of Egyptian's first magician. Please consider liking and subscribing to us, but also hit that notification bell so you can see our next journey through time and folklore. Your continued support helps us keep these stories and tales alive. And so, do you have any favourite magic tricks? Let us know in the comments as well. We always like to hear from our audience. Till next time, keep an ear out for the whispers of folklore around you, because every story, like every great magic trick, has a secret that is just waiting to be uncovered. And as always, keep exploring the world with wonder.